For all they do all year round, I always love dropping teachers little notes. And I also really love using up cardstock to make interesting cards as well. So in this lesson, we're going to be working with just cardstock and some liquid mediums to create this card. Now you could use any punch shape, any die. I'm going to work with my scan and cut because there happens to be an apple in here that would be just perfect for this card. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So first of all, we're going to take our pieces of paper for our apple design and place them on the mat. Anywhere that you want to have them is absolutely fine, as long as it's within the borders. So we're going to go ahead and load our mat in, and then go into pattern. And here in the patterns, I can already see my apple, so I know exactly where to go and select it. Now, if you want to resize it at all, you can. It will tell you how high it's going to be as well as how wide, which is helpful to me because then I know exactly what the dimensions are of my shape, and say okay. Then we're going to select a piece, either piece, and say okay and set. Then we're going to add, because we want to go ahead and add that other piece since we have both pieces of cardstock here ready to cut, and set. And to know where exactly we should be placing these here on the screen where they should cut, just press the scan button that will scan in the mat and let us know where our paper is. This is really great because it really lets me use up all of my scraps because I can see precisely where everything is, where it's going to be, and lets me place everything just so. So once you are all satisfied with that, you'll just say okay and ask it to cut. Once the designs are cut, go ahead and unload the mat so that you can remove them. And you can work with the scraper tool or just with your hands. It kind of depends on the paper. You may find that with some paper you do better with the tool. So there's our apple, and here's our little stem, all ready to get some ink and some stenciling. The first thing that we will stencil will be the apple, and we're going to use clear gesso. I'm going to use clear gesso because I want it to have a little bit of dimension, but I don't want a white color. I just want that little added dimension that I can get from using the stencil. So I'm just going to apply a little bit to a palette knife and then spread it gently on there, really making sure to just hold the stencil in place. And I'm going to do it this way. You could directly apply it to the stencil, but what I find is when I do that, sometimes I put too much and it slides under the stencil, making a bigger mess than I would like. Once you are satisfied with how it is covered, you can go ahead and lift it off. Now, if you see a little bit of the gesso slide underneath, that's okay. It's not going to be a problem. And then you can reapply if you would like to add more to any other areas. You just want to make sure that you don't lay your stencil over the top of any wet mediums. All right, so with that finished, we're going to just let this set aside to dry and we'll work on the base. I have a 4.5-inch card here. It's a square card. Craft cardstock. I always keep a lot of craft cardstock around. It's so much fun. And for this one, we're going to use that fun stencil. And I love the zigzaggy pattern. It just adds so much when you're wanting to add a background texture. And this time I'm using texture paste, and I'm not going to be precise at all. I'm just going to smear some along here. And I'm not going to be precise at all because I'm going to find that the rougher lines around here actually add a lot of character to my stenciling and really help get me the results that I would like. Now, if there are any areas that are maybe hard line that you would like to soften up, you can use a paintbrush, you can use your palette knife here, and just kind of gently dab. And because the texture paste is really, as far as wet mediums go, it's pretty dry, it'll let you just kind of smudge and smear without totally destroying anything. So I love to do this when I want to have a little bit of a gentle edge. And again, we're going to need to set that aside and let it totally dry before we go on to add some ink. So once dry, we're going to use ink. Now I am going to use the candied apple onto my apple because what that's going to do, it's not going to add a lot. It's going to be very, very subtle, but it is going to add just a little bit of difference to my cardstock where there is not the clear gesso. It's just gonna help that texture just stand out a little bit more. And then I'm going to repeat with a similar idea, only this time with ground espresso onto the paste on my card. And I can do a lot here, or I can do just a little bit. It depends on if you want that white paste to really show up, or if you would rather that it be more blended into the background. And you know, it's really going to be personal preference for that, and maybe it'll depend on your card, exactly what you're making and who you're making it for. I know mine tends to vary. Feeling a little inky today though, so we're adding a bit there. And now we get to assemble. I'm going to use some foam adhesive for my apple because I really want it to have just that little extra bit of pop, but this is totally optional. You could adhere it straight onto your card base. And I'm going to go ahead and center the apple first and just make sure it's towards the bottom. And then I've got my little stem here. I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on the actual stem and then foam adhesive out towards the end of the leaf. What this will do is the stem will be more flat, but then the leaf will have just that little bit of dimension. Now here's my finished card. You can see how it's coming along here. We're doing really, really well. We're almost there. So the next thing is to pick out a sentiment. I happen to have the Pink Fresh Studios Felicity stickers. I'm always loving word and phrase stickers. And these are really cute because they have little watercolor splatters all over them. And this time I'm going to pick Think Happy, Be Happy. And this life is sweeter than fiction. I'm just adding a couple little sentiments here. And I'm just placing them to the one side of the apple. And once I've done that, now we're gonna embellish. So I've got some red buttons and beads and things here from this embellishment bottle. And I'm going to pick out a few spots where I feel like there would be a good look. The embellishment would be a good look, where I think I want a few little things, and start with there. I like to start with just a few things and then add a few more as I go along, so that if for some reason I decide, you know what, that's enough, then I can just stop and I don't have to worry about it. Now because we're on foam adhesive, that means that I can put embellishments both under the edge of the apple and over the apple, which I think is a lot of fun because it means I've just got that many more possibilities for adding little fun details, bits and pieces. So once I have my buttons down, I'm going to find a few more spots and just add a little more glossy accents here and there to add a few little sequins and beads and little smaller embellishments. I like to keep these for the end because, you know, they really are easier to add in. And once I place the bigger items, it really becomes obvious for me where I have need of a few little things. And I think I'd like one more up here. I think we're done. All right, there it is, just some cardstock, paste, and gesso, and I love the results. I hope you do too, and you're inspired to go out there and make your own card with just some cardstock.